Guys, we are live. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to a special live edition of the Liz Wheeler Show. We are live right now on YouTube, on Facebook, and right here on X. And we're really happy to have you join us today. We have a big show planned. We're going to wait to get started with the good stuff until everyone has a chance to log on. That usually takes a minute or two. So hang with us while everyone gets settled, gets their seat, gets their coffee, gets their phone out so you can rage tweet while we're talking here. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about Daniel Penny, the case in Alvin Bragg's Manhattan of a white man being charged because he's white. They're calling it restorative justice, but it is the biggest miscarriage of justice in our law, in our system of justice, in our judicial process that I've seen in a long time. He's now waiting for a jury deliberating his liberty. He could face up to 15 years in prison because he subdued a schizophrenic criminal who was threatening him with death on the subway in New York City. He is facing prison time for it. We're also going to talk about Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth was actually just on Megyn Kelly's show just moments ago. He is under fire. The left, and it's not just the left. It's not just the mainstream media. There are also some Republicans who are jumping on the get rid of Pete bandwagon. He is facing fire. He's obviously President Trump's nominee to be Secretary of Defense. And let me just tell you, it is critically important that we support Pete Hegseth. He was just telling Megyn Kelly, he got off the phone with President Trump today, and President Trump told him, listen, you got to be tough as blank to survive in this political arena, but that President Trump thinks he's the man for this moment. And I'm very encouraged to hear that. But we're going to talk a little bit about who exactly is behind some of these rumors, these unsubstantiated allegations, this character assassination of Pete Hegseth. Today's show is sponsored by First Cup Coffee. You can go to firstcup.com, use my promo code Liz, and you will get 10% off your first cup. I really enjoy hearing from those of you who have tried some of these patriotic flavors. So if you buy this, if you use it, if you love it, go ahead and tag me on X, on Instagram, on Facebook. Let me know in the comments. That's firstcup.com, promo code Liz. All right, it's good to see you all. David says hi. Kurt says good afternoon. Cat Daddy says good afternoon, friends. Guys, it's good to see you. It's good to see everybody. I see a lot of people are logging on. We'll give everybody just another minute to join before we jump into this. It's one of the most egregious miscarriages of justice in our country. What's happening in Manhattan today? There is a young man, an innocent young man, who is facing up to 15 years in prison thanks to critical race theory permeating our legal system. We're going to talk about what the recourse is for our country and the implications, not just the personal implications for Daniel Penny, but what this means for you and for me, and why we must have zero tolerance for this kind of racism, because that's what it is. This man is being targeted because he's white in our country. All right, a couple people, Tim, have said that the audio is low. All right, guys, if you can hear me okay, give me a thumbs up in the comments here. We want to make sure the audio is good to go before we launch into, it's just one of the most banana stories, one of the most unjust stories. All right, Lux says hi, Liz. Like, let me know, you guys, if you can hear me. If it's too low, if it's too high, we can make adjustments before we get going. Tim, how does it sound to you? All right, Craig says thumbs up. Bob says thumbs up. Elizabeth says thumbs up. Keith says thumbs up. Kurt says thumbs up. Okay, loud and clear, buddy says. That's our cue. Good to go here. All right, Daniel Penny's the topic of the day. Pete Hegseth is the topic of the day. So make sure that you stick around for both, because there are some people behind the attacks on Pete Hegseth that aren't your usual suspects. It's not just the radical left. It's not just George Soros. It's not just Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. It's not just the deep state. There are some Republicans behind the character assassination of Pete Hegseth as well. And we're going to expose them because they have no place in our party. They have vastly underestimated the beast that they have awakened in us, the American people. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about Daniel Penny. In one of the most egregious miscarriages of justice in our country, a young man by the name of Daniel Penny, he's a veteran of the U.S. Marine Corps, is facing possibly 15 years in prison for the crime of stopping a deranged, schizophrenic criminal who was making death threats against fellow passengers on the subway in New York City. And Daniel Penny stopped him from committing the atrocity that this maniac was threatening to commit. And the reason why Daniel Penny is now facing up to 15 years in prison, if the jury, who is, as we speak, we could possibly have a verdict handed down while we're live on air, this jury deliberating today, Penny's liberty, if they convict Penny of manslaughter, the reason is because Daniel Penny is white. So let's talk about the facts of what happened that day. Back in May of 2023, Daniel Penny, then 26 years old, was riding the subway when a madman, clearly out of his mind, entered the subway car and began to make death threats against the innocent people around him, Penny being one of them. Neely, who was high on K2 at the time, which is a synthetic form of marijuana, the effects are similar to cocaine, also had severe paranoid schizophrenia. Now, Neely was an objectively dangerous person. He was a repeat criminal who had been arrested dozens of times with a rap sheet of criminal convictions as long as your arm. When Neely entered the subway car that day in 2023, he threw his jacket on the ground and he began to threaten those around him. He began claiming that he wasn't afraid to die as he was issuing death threats against others. He said he wasn't afraid to go back to jail. He wasn't afraid to spend his life in prison. According to those who were present during this altercation, people around Neely were afraid. And rightly so. Jordan Neely had an active arrest warrant at the time. So Daniel Penny, U.S. Marine veteran, did what he was trained to do. He protected his fellow countrymen. He put himself, his body, between Jordan Neely's death threats and the innocent passengers on the subway. He prevented what could have been an injurious or even deadly attack from a man who was threatening just such an attack. Daniel Penny subdued Jordan Neely by putting him in a headlock and holding him on the ground until the next subway stop, at which point police were waiting. You can watch the altercation happen here. Take a look. And what you're seeing is Jordan Neely on the ground, and after he passed out in this chokehold, he was put in the resuscitation position. You can see other passengers helping Daniel Penny put Jordan Neely in the rescue position. And you'll notice, I would ask you to note the posture of the fellow passengers. They're not acting as though a murder was committed. Though Jordan Neely at this point had lost consciousness, they're not acting as though Daniel Penny committed a crime. They are, in fact, helping the man who was threatening to kill them as they wait to arrive at the next subway stop. You can see that with your very eyes. Now, unfortunately, Jordan Neely died following this altercation. He lost his life, but nobody who witnessed the interaction thought anything of it, certainly didn't think a crime had been committed, except to feel gratitude to Daniel Penny for saving them from Jordan Neely's dangerous and substantiated threats. Until, that is, Alvin Bragg got involved. Yes, that Alvin Bragg. Daniel Penny actually spoke to police immediately after the altercation and then walked free, thinking too that this was the end of a rather nasty event that had happened. 11 days later, however, Alvin Bragg's office announced that they were indicting Daniel Penny and charging him with second-degree manslaughter and negligent homicide. The public justification for this egregious indictment of Penny was because the city medical examiner's office ruled that Jordan Neely's death, they ruled it a homicide by asphyxiation, blaming the chokehold that Daniel Penny placed on Neely as a restraint. Now, that's hardly a convincing argument at face value when forensic pathologist Dr. Satish Chundru dissented, contending that Neely's death was actually a result of his drug use, his sickle cell trait, the physical exertion from the struggle, and his severe mental illness, a combination of factors. Now, again, it's worth noting at face value, just based on that should have made it obvious to everyone that this case should never have been brought to trial. It shouldn't have even been a case to begin with. What it should have been, if anything, was an indictment on the leftist policies that allowed Jordan Neely out of prison dozens of times, endangering the public. And the fact that New York City police is so woke, thanks to the leftist politicians who control New York City, that a criminal with an arrest warrant is ignored, just riding the subway. But the nefarious truth has just surfaced. What's really behind the arrest, the prosecution, and the potential imprisonment of Daniel Penny. The real reason was spoken by the woman who is prosecuting the case in her own words. And I'm going to show you those words in a moment. But first, I want you to remember in Alvin Bragg's Manhattan, restorative justice is the law of the land. Gone are the days when we could count on Lady Liberty holding the scales of justice to weigh the truth. Now, in a world of restorative justice, which I intentionally put in quotation marks because it's a euphemism that the left uses for how they're warping and twisting our justice system into a tool of their woke agenda, all that matters are two facts: that Daniel Penny is white and Jordan Neely was black, which means that Penny was guilty even before a trial, and Neely was the innocent victim of oppression and systemic racism. Now, this is not my speculation. This is not my opinion. This is not even my observation. This ugly truth was admitted by Daphne Yoren, the woman from Alvin Bragg's office who's prosecuting Daniel Penny. In this video, Daphne says the first time that she applied restorative justice was all the way back in 2018 when a black man robbed someone else, and she felt sorry for the black man because he was black, and so let him off easily because of his skin color. Take a listen to this.
So I'm going to give you an example of something that I did with a recent case of mine, and this has never been done in my office. I had a murder case where the defendant did not intentionally kill the victim. He went into an ATM on the Upper West Side and tried to rob an individual. Unfortunately, it was an older individual. He was 86. And in the course of the robbery, he fell to the ground. And as a result, he died. This is, under the law, a felony murder, which is akin to intentional murder. However, when I first got the case, I learned, I took the time to learn about the defendant. And it was a strong case, so it wasn't about a whodunit. I knew immediately who did it. I could prove it. I could take it to trial that day and win it. But it wasn't about that. It was that the more I learned about the defendant and his life and the circumstances, the kinds of things that Jarrell was talking about, that one should take into account the trauma of that individual, I really felt incredibly sorry for him that he had gotten to that point in his life where he felt like there was no other choice but to commit this robbery.
So it's not hypothetical, is it? If the skin color were reversed, this prosecutor from Alvin Bragg's office would have and did let a man who had black skin off the hook for murder because he had black skin. And so the reverse of this, with Daniel Penny, a man with white skin, she is specifically targeting, though the facts of the case show that Daniel Penny did not intentionally end Jordan Neely's life, she's targeting him because he has white skin. Ask yourself this question, ladies and gentlemen. If we accept a justice system which targets one man specifically because of the color of his skin and ignores the crimes of another man specifically because of the color of his skin, then those in power who perpetrate such evil are no better than those in our nation's history who propagated atrocities against black people simply because of their black skin. Only now it's reversed. And white people are the target for discrimination because they have white skin. Is this the country that we want to live in? Daphne Yoren, by the way, this prosecutor, has a history of reducing punishments for black people, refusing to prosecute crimes based on a person's skin color. And we must call that what it is. It's racial persecution against white people. Daniel Penny is the victim of racial persecution. You can call it by whatever euphemism you want to use to hide the truth: restorative justice, critical legal theory, whatever. We all know what it is. It's racism of the worst kind. Again, go back to that day in May, the spring of 2023. Jordan Neely was high on drugs. He had a severe case of paranoid schizophrenia, a lengthy criminal history, an active arrest warrant, and he was issuing death threats at those around him in an enclosed space where people had no opportunity to escape or run away. Daniel Penny protected his fellow passengers with heroically sacrificial willingness to confront danger before someone else was harmed. He put Neely in a headlock. He spoke to police after. He walked away free. And again, remember what I asked you to note when we watched that video. Nobody present at the scene acted like the altercation was murder. We watched that. Yet police in a city so permeated with restorative justice asked Daniel Penny seemingly trick questions immediately afterwards. Take a listen.
Daniel?
Yep.
I'm Detective McCarthy. I'm Detective Medina. I actually work here at Fifth Precinct. This is where you're at right now.
Cool.
How you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Okay.
Very good, very good.
I'm doing well.
Yeah.
You served in the Marine Corps, Daniel?
I did, yes.
I served in the Marine Corps.
Oh, nice. Nice.
Got my little death before the sun attack.
There you go. Nice, man.
What you doing? What was your MOS in the
I was in 0351.
I was an 0331.
Oh, cool. Michigan. Yeah,
Yeah.
weapons platoon.
Yeah.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
I was not military, so I don't know what that stuff is.
It's like another language.
Kind of run with me and Detective Medina, you know, the course of your day, where you're coming from, where you're
Sure.
going, and then what led up to, you know, the incident on the train.
Absolutely. So I have class down in Brooklyn. I take the F down to J Street Metro Tech. My class is at 12. So once the class finished up, I was going straight to the gym. I go to the gym in Lifetime on 23rd Street. So I get off, I take the F straight from school to the gym. Was on there, I forget what stop it was at, but some guy came in, he's like, whipped his jacket off, and he's like, I'm gonna kill everybody, I can go to prison forever, I don't care, I don't do this. At that point, I looked to the person next to me like, hey, just hang on to this phone for me. I had my headphones in, took it off, and just kind of like grabbed him from behind, because he came in, just to like, because he was acting like a lunatic, like a crazy person. So, and he was rolling around the floor, and at that point the train stopped. I was like, someone call the cops, and he's still like rolling around, still going crazy. Had two other guys kind of help me, just kind of keep him from going nuts, and yeah, that's when you guys came.
Okay.
Did he seem like he was on something? Did he
Yeah,
seem
absolutely.
intoxicated and high?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that K2 that they're smoking, pushing people in front, like these people are going crazy. So it was
So he seemed off his lid, basically.
a little bit, yeah.
Now, explain the interaction you had with him.
So I came up, he had his back turned to me, and I just kind of got him in a hold, got him to the ground. He's still like squirming around and still, you know, going crazy. And I turned to the guy, I'm like, hey, call the cops, because the train arrived in Broadway,
Yeah.
and then waited for you guys.
Okay.
Was
Daniel, you said Daniel, right?
Yes, correct.
Do you mind showing me?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so he was standing behind me,
Yeah.
and I kind of came like this.
Okay. Did
And
you
then-
apply pressure, Daniel?
No, I wasn't, I just wanted to keep him from getting to people.
Did you put your hooks in?
Yeah, wrap my legs.
Did you learn the jujitsu from the Marine Corps?
I did, yes.
You learned how to grapple in the Marine Corps. What belt level you made it to?
Green.
Green belt?
Yeah,
You good? All right.
it was alright. I was a little bit, yeah, I should have went higher. know.
Should have applied yourself more, huh?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's 20/20, right?
So he says, you know, if I don't get this, I'm gonna kill everyone. Something
Going
to
to
that.
jail forever,
Yeah.
I'm willing to.
Is it at that point that's when you get up and
Yes.
decide to put him in the hold?
After
Because it looks
some-
like a sleeper hold to me, like
Right,
something
yeah.
similar to like.
I'm not trying to,
No.
like, kill the guy.
Right.
I'm just trying to de-escalate the situation, right?
I understand.
Yeah.
He was making enough of a scene that you noticed him, and then you probably would have noticed if he put his hands on someone.
But I didn't.
Okay, all right, that's fine. And then once he starts doing that, that's when you try to subdue him.
Yes, I wasn't trying to like injure him.
Right.
I'm just trying to keep him from hurting anybody else. He's threatening people. That's what we learned in the Marine Corps. That's what you guys learn in the as police officers. It's the same thing if you're off duty. You're gonna intervene in a situation where.
How could anybody who watched those two videos together think that Daniel Penny is guilty of a crime? It's simply obvious to any person who is honest that Daniel Penny was protecting those around him. He was de-escalating the situation, but even the cops were trying to trick him into saying that he was angry. He wanted to hurt the guy. He wanted to get back at the guy. Suffice to say, Penny never intended to kill Neely. He was simply protecting others on the train. He never should have been prosecuted. And yet, as we speak, he awaits a jury that could very well send him to prison for 15 years. Now, what's at stake in this case? I want to talk about this. Of course, Daniel Penny's future is at stake. Based on the evidence, he's innocent. Even if a jury finds him guilty today, he will have an appeal process. And yet, in a sense, it matters, but his life has already been turned upside down by prosecutors and a justice system so permeated with restorative justice that seeks not true justice, but an ideologically driven agenda. Here's the thing, my friends. Under restorative justice, we as individuals are gone. We're erased. It doesn't matter if Penny himself is innocent or not of this crime or any other crime. Under restorative justice, Penny must be punished due to the so-called sins of white people in the past, because Penny now is also white. Conversely, Neely, because he is black, must be freed time and time again, as he was. He had 42 arrests prior to his death. He never should have been out of jail. But he was, because the powers that be thought if only he was given a 43rd chance because he's black, that would be justice. Penny's a symbol here. He's the boogeyman. He's the white man. He must be punished for so-called systemic racism. The implications of this case aren't just a miscarriage of justice for Daniel Penny, the person, the individual. Any one of us, you or me, we could be next. We will be next. Innocent until proven guilty is no more. Judging people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, is no more. People like Daphne Yoren believe that skin color plays the primary role, plays any role in cases, in doling out punishments under the law. So if you're a white man sitting here with me today and you intervene to protect your loved ones and those around you, you just might be charged with a crime simply because of the color of your skin. Why? Well, if you're in a district where leftists like George Soros have pumped millions of dollars into the justice system, then I'm sorry, you're not living under the rule of law. You're living in a social engineering experiment where leftist judges and prosecutors put critical race theory into practice. Yes, that's what this is. The critical race theory that was indoctrinated into our children in classrooms has also polluted our justice system. And to quote one of the propagators of critical race theory himself, Ibram Kendi, critical race theory requires, quote, previous discrimination to be remedied by current discrimination. What he means by that, as evidenced by Daphne Yoren, is that minorities must be given a light sentencing and white Americans given harsher ones. Or even that black people who commit crimes are let entirely off the hook, like Jordan Neely, when they harm people and commit crimes, and innocent white people like Daniel Penny are sent to prison for 15 years for what? Restorative justice harms Americans. It doesn't just harm white Americans, it hurts all Americans. Daphne Yoren has a long history of using restorative justice to abuse the law. According to the New York Post in 2018, an Army veteran by the name of Hassan Correa, 35-year-old married father of 3, this is a horrendous story, was brutally beaten and fatally stabbed in Harlem. Correa had been jumped by at least 4 people, all of whom were minorities. Now, several of the suspects got off lightly because they struck plea deals with Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. Yoren was the prosecutor in that case as well, and Correa's mother, the 35-year-old who was killed, his mother absolutely let Yoren have it after she doled out essentially a slap on the wrist to one of the murderers. Madeline Brame screamed at the prosecutor, "I don't want to hear nothing else." She said, "Take that restorative justice bullshit and shove it up your blanks," she yelled. "Not for murder." Vulgar? Yeah. Correct? Oh yeah. God bless that mother. She's right. Restorative justice is BS. and we should have zero tolerance for it in our society. So as we await today this verdict, we pray for justice, but spread awareness about Daniel Penny. Come to his defense. Many of you, by the way, have come to his defense. His defense fund has reached over $3.2 million as of yesterday. Get involved, my friends, in local elections and make sure leftist prosecutors and judges don't get elected. And maybe most important of all, make your voice heard to the Republican senators who are allowing Joe Biden, or whoever controls Joe Biden, to ram through leftist judicial nominees. Demand that your senator stop supporting leftist judges, stop confirming them to lifetime appointments when we have evidence before our very eyes today of the damage inflicted on our nation, our families, ourselves, when ideologically corrupt and evil people like Alvin Bragg and Daphne Yoren use euphemisms like restorative justice to pervert our entire system of law. It's an abomination. Take a minute and pray for Daniel Penny. And now we're going to talk about Pete Hegseth. They're stepping up the attacks on Trump's nominees for cabinet positions. And I say that laughing because they have no idea the beast that they have awakened. Pete Hegseth is a disruptor. And because he's a disruptor and threatens to disrupt the military industrial complex itself, Pete has come under horrendous attack. And not attack for the policies that he wants to implement at the Department of Defense, not attack for his political positions, but character assassinations and reputation smears, personal attacks from anonymous sources. You'll remember a couple of days ago, the New York Times published an email sent to Pete Hegseth by his mother, Penelope. This was years ago during a nasty divorce that Pete was going through, and his mother sent him an email telling him to stop sleeping around. She said, "You're being nasty to women, and I'm not proud of that kind of behavior in my son." How a personal email like this got in the hands of the New York Times, maybe that's the question we should be asking. From my perspective, I don't agree with Pete sleeping around. I think a lot of people probably don't. Will that impact his ability to do his job at Department of Defense? Absolutely not. We'll get to that in a second. Pete's mom went on Fox and Friends this morning to talk about that email, this line of attack the left has gripped a hold of. And this is what she said. Take a listen.
What's one thing about Pete people don't realize?
That he's got a big heart, that he's very smart.
Yeah.
He is the most faithful patriot of this country. He loves his country. Loves his country. He's fought and almost died for his country. He's a good dad. He's an amazing son and father, and that's the Pete I want people to know.
The nomination of Pete Hegseth is critically important to our country. Critically important. That entire interview with Penelope Hegseth on Fox was 15 minutes long. It is well worth the watch of the entire interview. Penelope Hegseth is furious with the media for their double standards and their lack of context, as she should be. Imagine, for example, if we held this standard to senators in the United States Congress. Imagine if we said, well, Senator, whoever, Republican, Democrat, you're not allowed to vote if you have ever engaged in promiscuous sexual activity. How many senators do you think would step up to cast their vote? How many would pass that test? Something tells me not too many of them would. The newest line of attack against Pete Hegseth is that he would come to work at Fox drunk. These are such elementary character assassination. NBC reported this, and they based this accusation on 10 anonymous sources, people who refused to go on the record, to assassinate Pete's character. Once NBC released this hit piece on Pete Hegseth, Will Cain, Pete Hegseth's former co-host on Fox and Friends, in the space of one day, collected 19, and that's just the last time I looked. There might be more since the hour that I've done that I counted. Will Cain has 19 of Pete Hegseth's former coworkers on the record denying this allegation that Pete Hegseth was somehow a drunk. Again, Might I suggest that we apply these standards, the promiscuity standard and the alcohol standard, to the United States Congress first? If you, as a senator, have ever used, for example, the fund in Congress to pay off accusers of sexual misconduct, if you've ever engaged in sexual misconduct, promiscuous sex, if you've ever had a drink in the United States Capitol, if you've ever been drunk, even just a little tipsy buzzed, then may I ask you to step aside for this nomination. We can accept these rules, we can accept these terms, but the first people who will be subject to these brand new standards are going to be those who vote in favor or not of the confirmation of President Trump's nominees. Senator Lindsey Graham told the media he thinks these accusations against Pete Hegseth look pretty bad. This is what he said.
Some of these articles are very disturbing. He, obviously has a chance to defend himself here, but some of this stuff is going to be difficult. Time will tell. I like Pete. I've known him for a very, very long time.
Oh, it'll be difficult. Ask yourself this. Do you think Lindsey Graham is actually disturbed by these allegations? Or is Lindsey Graham disturbed by the fact that Pete Hegseth thinks that we should end the wars that Lindsey Graham profits off of, that Lindsey Graham likes? Lindsey Graham never met a war that he didn't like. And so there's been another sort of psychological attack that's been thrown at Pete Hegseth too. There's been a report that President Trump is considering dropping Pete Hegseth and replacing him with Ron DeSantis instead. But you know what? Sean Davis of The Federalist spoke with sources close to the Trump transition team and said this story is absolute nonsense. In fact, there's a report, call it a rumor if you want, that these kind of stories are being planted by rhino senators. Rhino senators like Joni Ernst, for example, who don't like Pete Hegseth because they're neocons. Senators like Joni Ernst, who herself wants to be the Secretary of Defense. Now, Pete Hegseth said he talked to President Trump this morning, and Trump said to keep fighting, that you have to be tough as blank to defeat these people, but Trump believes that Hegseth is the man to do it. And I just want to say this. I have a message today for the despicable, lying sycophants who are throwing these fake hatchets at Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel too. You have no idea the sleeping giant that you have awakened when you weaponized government to target us and profited from spilling the blood of our beloved brothers and sons in your forever wars. If you think that we're going to roll over, just let you torpedo Trump's nominees with unsubstantiated, anonymous fake news and slimy character assassinations, you're utterly delusional. We were born for this fight. This is the core reason we elected Trump, to send disruptors like Hegseth, like Patel, into the swamp, to drain it. Right now, you're trembling with fear that Hegseth and Patel will wrestle power from your hands. That's exactly right. That's exactly what's going to happen. The moment the Senate confirms Hegseth and Patel, your reign of abuse is over. You know it, and we know it. We also know that these evil attacks on Pete Hegseth and Kash Patel are coming not just from radical leftists, but from slimy uniparty swamp creatures in the Republican Senate who've sold their souls for war profit and domestic power. We, the people, abhor you. And more importantly, we know your names. You have betrayed us once too many times, and you will be primaried into oblivion. The most profound words President Trump has ever spoken came just seconds after a would-be assassin fired a bullet that narrowly missed penetrating his brain. The president said to us, the American people, fight, fight, fight. Make no mistake, we will fight for these appointments. For Pete Hegseth, for Kash Patel, for Tulsi Gabbard, for Jay Bhattacharya, for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., for Tom Homan. You have vastly underestimated the sleeping giant that you have awakened. We are roaring lions. We will be abused no more. For love of truth, for love of humanity, for love of our country, I encourage the United States Senate to confirm Pete Hegseth. But what's the mood of the United States Senate? Well, we got a peek into the Capitol. What's the Senate think of these false allegations coming from the uniparty through the media? Take a look at this.
And or for that matter, I don't want him to admit to things he that didn't do if he truly didn't do them either. But the allegations are very, very serious. They can't be trivialized, and I just want to know that he's redeemed, and going forward he's going to be better.
So, finger in the wind, what's your sense of the mood of the conference with this nomination?
I think there's the mood of the conference, and then there's the mood of the Trump transition team itself. So we'll see what kind of messages and signals we hear throughout the course of the day.
Okay, stop it right there. Stop it right there. We will see what kind of signals and messages we hear throughout the course of the entire day. Do you know what that means, my friends? It means that your voice makes a difference. It means that your voice matters. It means that the louder we speak, the stronger we speak, the more that we politely but firmly demand that our representatives in the United States Senate vote to confirm these nominees of President Trump's, the more likely they are to do so. If President Trump backs down on Pete Hegseth, and I don't think he will, it's not just a worse cabinet. It's a hit on the entire agenda. Conversely, if President Trump fights, and I think he will, this is not just a win against the media. This is not just a win for this particular nominee. This is a win for the entire America First agenda. It's also, if we want to speak in practical strategic terms here, it's a very effective tool to root out the corruption that exists within our own party. Take, for example, this scenario. If Pete Hegseth sits before the United States Senate in a confirmation hearing because President Trump had the iron will to weather Pete through these attacks, if Pete Hegseth sits before the United States Senate and is somehow torpedoed by the rhinos, then they are forced in public to expose their corruption to you and to me, which gives us the opportunity, the fire in our belly, if you will, to primary them. We are here to fight for these nominees. Tell your senator. If you're on your laptop, pull up your email right now. If you're on your cell phone, pull up X right now. Tag your senator, tag your nominee, tag your president, and tell them we're here to fight. Now, the government is looking to take control over your money and my money. They're going to do so by implementing a digital dollar. This is a project spearheaded by the UN and the globalists. And it's a reminder to us today that we need to take control over our wealth so that we don't fall prey to this scheme. I highly encourage you to call the only precious metal dealer that I trust, American Hartford Gold. They'll show you how to protect your savings and your retirement accounts by diversifying your wealth portfolio with physical gold and silver. American Hartford Gold is a fabulous company. They support content like this that's committed to bringing you the truth. Tell them I sent you. They'll give you up to $15,000 of free silver on your first order. You can call them right now. You can click the link in the description of this episode, or you can call 866-996-5172. That's 866-996-5172. Or if you prefer text messaging, you can text my name, Liz, L-I-Z, to 998899. Again, the phone number to call is 866-996-5172, or text Liz to 998899. Also, did you guys get your merch for the holidays, your Blaze Media merch for the holidays? If you haven't, go to shopblazemedia.com. That's shopblazemedia.com. We have all kinds of cool stuff. I was recently down in Dallas at Blaze HQ. They had a table with all of their new merch that they were debuting on the website, and I might have snagged a few items. A couple of hats that are pretty much the coolest MAGA hats that you've ever seen. Go to shopblazemedia.com. If you use the promo code BLAZE10, you can get 10% off your entire order. That's shopblazemedia.com. Promo code BLAZE10 for 10% off. Do it today. It's a great Christmas gift for your family members, or let's be real, maybe just for yourself. I wouldn't blame you if you got a Christmas gift for yourself. If it's this kind of stuff. Okay, let's talk about how powerful your voice is. In the course of the last week and a half, President Trump has announced his cabinet nominees, and the vast majority of them have been the disruptors we elected Trump to send into the deep state. They've been fabulous. We are here to fight for them. There have been a couple who have been subpar nominees, and there's proper recourse when this happens to bring attention to President Trump of the disadvantages, the flaws of his nominees. We talked about the Surgeon General nominee last week, Dr. Jeanette Nishiwat. And we also, this happened primarily on X over the weekend. It was Sunday morning that I was posting about Chad Chronister, who was President Trump's nominee for DEA head, the chief of the DEA. This guy is a former sheriff in Florida, or he's a current sheriff who was going to leave his job. And I did a quick search of his X history just to do a little background on him, because this guy seemed a little suspect to me. And we pretty quickly found out that Chad Chronister was abusive during COVID. He arrested a pastor who held a church service during COVID. He was telling people on their boats to social distance, just this absolute nut of a guy. And we brought this to President Trump's attention. Well, a result of this, of you bringing this to President Trump's attention, President Trump withdrew the nomination of Chad Chronister for DEA. And this is a victory. This is something you should congratulate yourself for. Pat yourself on the back. This is, I feel that we are linked arm in arm, bringing this to Trump's attention. And I want to say, last week when we talked about the Surgeon General pick of Trump's and why she is problematic, we're still hoping that President Trump withdraws that nomination, or Chad Chronister. There were some people who said, listen, don't criticize President Trump. His nominees are facing all these false allegations as it is. We want to stand with him, supporting him, in solidarity with him. We don't want to be disloyal. And I said, listen, that's not the proper way to think about it. It's not how I think about it. It's not how you should think about it. When we bring information to President Trump's attention, we are helping President Trump build the sharpest, most effective administration that he possibly can, because we support the America First agenda, because we are MAGA. And that's exactly, I said, when we bring this information to Trump, oftentimes he may not have heard it, because the way that this process works is the people around Trump on his team bring candidates for him to consider. Of those candidates that are brought to his attention, President Trump picks the one that he wants. He's the one that makes the decision, but somebody is usually doing the pitching, saying, hey, here's somebody you should appoint to XYZ position, and here's why you should appoint them. Well, the people that are pitching their favorite candidates don't always give President Trump a full picture of these people. Chad Chronister is a perfect example of this. So when we bring this information to Trump's attention, we are actually giving him all the information he needs to make an informed decision. And his statement about why he is withdrawing Chad Chronister is a perfect example of that. On Truth Social, I'll bring this up so we all can see it. He said, today, the Wall Street Journal is becoming more and more obnoxious and unreadable. Today's main headline is Trump's DEA pick pulls out in latest setback. With all that's happening in the world, Trump says this is their number one story of the day. Besides, he didn't pull out. I pulled him out because I did not like what he said to my pastors and other supporters. So what does that tell you? It tells you that President Trump, before he selected Chad Chronister as DEA, as his pick for DEA, he didn't know the information that we then brought to Trump's attention. So congratulations. This is a helpful thing. You are part of making the Trump administration the sharpest, most effective administration in our nation's history. You're helping President Trump. And my advice to President Trump would be this. I would keep an eye on whoever recommended Chronister to you so dishonestly, withholding all this information that took me a mere 30 minutes to collect by doing a search history on his X account. But it's because of your voice that brought this to Trump's attention, that the American people are protected from a man whose history as a law enforcement official was a history of abusing the American people in the name of COVID. All right. What do you think the next attack against Trump's nominees is going to be? Who's in the crosshairs next, and what is it? What is it going to be? We have Kash Patel. We have Tom Homan. We have RFK. We have Tulsi. We have Hegseth. We have Bhattacharya. Who's it going to be? What's the attack going to be? I'll tell you, you drop it in the chat who you think is going to be under attack next and what you think that attack's going to be. And I'll tell you what my prediction is. My prediction may seem obvious to you. My prediction is that Kash Patel is going to come under attack next. And they're already dripping the information that's going to predicate this attack. There was a report this morning that Kash Patel's computer, his phone, his email, his private information was hacked by Iran. Hacked by Iran is what we were told. Oh, okay. An adversarial power. Why would Iran care about Kash Patel? You know who cares about Kash Patel? The left. You know who cares about Kash Patel? The deep state swamp creatures who right now exist within the FBI. Iran hacked Kash Patel to try to find damaging information that, somehow is just going to become public, a mainstream media outlet that also maybe has sources within the FBI. Maybe they were part of propagating Russia, these mainstream outlets that are about to get some juicy drop of information that Iran hacked from Kash Patel's computer. Whatever that is, it's going to be a similar type of smear. It's going to be a character assassination. It's going to be, if only they could find some woman somewhere at some time in Kash Patel's past who has something nasty to say about him. And they're going to try to use that to take him out. Because when they actually contend with President Trump's nominees on substance, on policy, on fact, on reality, they will lose every single time. And so they have to resort to deceit, to lying, to character assassination, to smears, to standards they don't hold their own people to. Who's it going to be? All right, let's look in the chat. William Morgan says Hegseth is first, then Bondi. Pam Bondi is in deep now. The DOJ knows way more than anyone knows. Oh, William, that's a good call. That's a good call. Pam Bondi, what are the allegations going to be against her? Just wait. There'll be something. There'll be something she did or something she said or something an old friend who won't go on record accuses her of doing. Former coworker says she has a toxic environment. Something of that nature. Something unprovable. It's called unfalsifiable. Why do we wait to play defense? Wheeze Barney says, why do we wait to play defense? Republicans go on the offensive now. That's exactly right. That is exactly right. Stop letting the Democrats set the tone. Stop letting the left and the media drive the narratives. It is up to us. Dan says everyone he picks will be attacked, period. Yeah, that's exactly right. Don't let them define the narrative. Don't let them get away with it. I think they have vastly underestimated our willpower, our passion, our energy, our enthusiasm to fight for these nominees. We want disruptors to disrupt things. That's why they're called disruptors. That's why we elected Trump. And the louder that we speak, supporting them, the nominees themselves, refuting the lies that are told about them, encouraging President Trump to pick based individuals, and calling out the rhinos for their hit jobs or their lack of willingness to support President Trump's nominees, the more effective this administration is going to be. I, for one, cannot wait. What are we, T-minus 6 weeks, 7 weeks from the inauguration? It is going to be quite a day, and I think you and I are going to spend that day together, are we not? I think we are. All right, guys, make sure that you subscribe to the show on YouTube, youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, leave me a 5-star review. If you listen to the show on Spotify and I'm in your Spotify wrap of the year, tag me on X, tag me on Instagram. I want to see if I made your Spotify wrap. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.